Seriously, Sam? You showed up at a gala dinner wearing that cheap suit from the mall? How embarrassing. My wife Vanessa's voice cut through the elegant buzz of the room like a sharp blade, causing all heads to turn in our direction. We were at the Metropolitan Hotel, at the annual Morrison Industries Awards dinner, where the city's top executives were celebrating another year of astronomical profits. Vanessa was wearing a $3,000 navy blue dress, which I had paid for, and smiling with that look of superiority I knew so well. Everyone here is wearing Armani, Hugo Boss, and you show up in this polyester thing, she continued, adjusting the diamond earrings that also came off my credit card. It's embarrassing to be seen with you. My name is Sam Richardson, and at 35, I've just been publicly humiliated by the woman who promised to love me in sickness and in health. The problem is, she only keeps the first part of that promise. Vanessa worked as a marketing manager at Morrison Industries, a position she got thanks to the contacts I cultivated over years of building my technology consulting firm. Ironic how she forgot that detail whenever she needed to belittle me in public. The suit is perfectly appropriate, I replied calmly, adjusting the tie I had carefully chosen that morning. It wasn't Armani, but it wasn't from the mall either, as she implied. It was a decent suit that cost $800, money I could have used to expand my company. Suitable for what? To be a waiter. Vanessa laughed, and a few people around us smiled nervously. Honey, you need to understand that we're on a different level now. I work with the big executives in this city. I need a husband who can keep up. The irony burned in my throat. Vanessa spoke as if she were the one supporting our $400,000 home in Riverside Hills, our BMW in the garage, and our annual vacations in Cancun. In reality, her salary barely covered her monthly shopping sprees at Saks Fifth Avenue. As she continued her show for the growing audience of onlookers, I discreetly observed the executives around us. Charles Morrison, the president of the company where she worked, was 3 tables ahead of us, chatting animatedly with other businessmen I recognized from the business pages of the local newspaper. Maybe next time I should pick out your clothes, Vanessa continued, touching my arm with feigned concern. You clearly have no sense for these sophisticated occasions. What she didn't know was that I had spent the last 6 months developing a revolutionary business management platform. A technology that several large corporations had already shown interest in acquiring, including Morrison Industries. If you're enjoying following this story of how arrogance can backfire on those who practice it, don't forget to subscribe to the channel to find out how that night would completely change the course of our story. As Vanessa continued her humiliating performance, I kept my polite smile, knowing that she was digging her own grave without realizing it. Every condescending word, every superior giggle, every look of contempt was being etched into my memory with surgical precision. Because what my dear wife didn't realize was that this would be the last time she would have the chance to humiliate me in public. In fact, it would be the last time she would ever have any kind of advantage over me. But to understand how a simple night of humiliation turned into the most spectacular game changer this city has ever witnessed, you first need to know the whole truth about who Vanessa Morrison Richardson really was. The truth about Vanessa Morrison Richardson was much more complex than that performance in the ballroom suggested. She wasn't just an arrogant wife, she was a calculating manipulator who had turned our marriage into an exploitation enterprise with only one employee, me. I met Vanessa 5 years ago at a tech conference in Austin. She was working as an administrative assistant at a failed startup, and I had just closed my third $100,000 consulting deal. At the time, she seemed genuinely impressed with my vision for the future of business technology. You have a brilliant mind, Sam, she said that first night, her green eyes sparkling as I explained my plans to revolutionize corporate management. I've always wanted to be part of something this big. What I didn't realize was that being part of meant something very different in her mind. 2 months after the wedding, Vanessa completely abandoned any pretense of building a career of her own. Instead, she became an expert at turning my successes into social opportunities for herself. Every new contract I closed became an excuse for her to host expensive dinners with influential people who, coincidentally, always worked at companies I was trying to win over. It's strategic networking, honey, she would explain whenever I questioned the exorbitant expenses for social events. You need someone who understands how to navigate these sophisticated circles. The irony was that Vanessa really did have a talent for impressing people. She memorized names, remembered personal details, and had a natural gift for making powerful executives feel special in her presence. The problem was that she used these skills not to strengthen my company, but to build her own reputation at my expense. That's how she got the position at Morrison Industries. During a dinner that cost $3,000 on my card, she charmed Charles Morrison with stories about our business vision and our innovative projects. A week later, he invited her for an interview for the marketing manager position. They loved my experience in technology project management. She lied blatantly when she told me about the offer. The only experience she had was watching over my shoulder as I worked. But what really bothered me wasn't the lies or even the financial parasitism. It was the systematic way she had begun to rewrite our story to turn me into a supporting character in my own life. At parties, she talked about our business strategies as if she were a co-founder of my company. In interviews with local business magazines, which she got through contacts I had made, she presented herself as the creative force behind the innovations at Richardson Tech Solutions. Sam is the technical side, she would explain to journalists, with that condescending smile I had grown to hate. I'm responsible for strategic vision and business relationships. The most frustrating thing was that people believed her. Vanessa had developed such a convincing persona as a successful executive that few questioned how a woman with no business degree or previous experience in technology had supposedly become the mastermind behind one of the fastest-growing consulting firms in town. Meanwhile, I worked 16 hours a day developing the platform that would revolutionize business management, while she spent her afternoons at the spa and her evenings at social events where she collected business cards like trophies. The humiliation at the Metropolitan Hotel was not an isolated incident. It was the culmination of 2 years of systematic belittlement that had begun subtly and grown into constant psychological torture. "You don't understand how the real corporate world works," was her favorite phrase whenever I suggested that perhaps she should give fewer interviews and give more credit to the work I did. Image is everything. You can have the best product in the world, but if you don't know how to present it properly. Presenting it properly, according to Vanessa, meant her appearing in business magazine photos while I stayed behind the scenes coding and closing deals. But what Vanessa didn't know, what no one but my lawyer and accountant knew, was that I had spent the last 6 months meticulously documenting every lie, every misappropriation of credit, every manipulation. And the platform I was developing? It already had 3 companies interested in an 8-figure acquisition, including a very specific proposal that arrived the morning after that humiliating dinner. A proposal that would completely change who had the real power in this relationship. While Vanessa slept in our king-size bed which I had paid for, probably planning her next public performance, I was in my office preparing the move that would turn her arrogance into her own undoing. The humiliation at the Metropolitan Hotel was just the prelude to what was to come. In the weeks that followed, Vanessa turned that night into her personal origin story, telling anyone who would listen how she had educated her husband about social appropriateness. "Poor Sam," she would sigh dramatically during lunches with her new friends from Morrison Industries. "He has technical talent, but zero social sophistication. Fortunately, I'm there to guide him." What bothered me most was not the lie itself, but how she had begun to genuinely believe her own version of reality. Vanessa really seemed convinced that she was the one who deserved credit for all my professional successes. The last straw came 3 weeks after the dinner. I was working in the office when I received a call from Janet Morrison, Charles Morrison's daughter and the company's director of development. "Sam, I need to talk to you about your wife," she said, her voice carrying a thinly veiled irritation. "Vanessa scheduled a meeting with me today to present a revolutionary business management proposal. When I asked for technical details, she said you were just the programmer responsible for coding her ideas." My blood ran cold. Vanessa had crossed a line I never imagined she would be capable of crossing. "She brought a complete presentation," Janet continued. 26 slides with charts, projections, and technical specifications that clearly did not come from her mind. "Sam, I've known your work for years through contracts with other companies. I recognize your signature in every algorithm she presented." I closed my eyes, feeling a toxic mixture of anger and humiliation burning in my chest. Vanessa hadn't just appropriated my work, she had tried to sell it directly to Morrison Industries, using my own platform as if it were her own creation. "What did you say to her?" I asked, trying to keep my voice under control. "I said we needed to talk to the lead developer before making any decisions. She insisted it was her, but also mentioned that you could clarify the minor technical aspects if necessary." Minor technical aspects. My business management platform, the result of 2 years of intensive development and 50,000 lines of code, had been reduced to minor technical aspects in Vanessa's narrative. Janet, I need you to know something, I said, making a decision that would change everything. This platform is entirely my creation. Vanessa was never involved in its development. In fact, she barely understands how the technology works. The silence on the other end of the line lasted for several long seconds before Janet replied, her voice now laden with icy fury. Sam, are you telling me that your wife tried to sell us something she stole from you? Not exactly, I replied, choosing my words carefully. She didn't steal it in the literal sense. She simply rewrote history to position herself as the creator. That's even worse, Janet retorted. It means she systematically planned this fraud. Sam, you need to understand that this puts our company in a very complicated position. Vanessa is our employee, but you are the true owner of the technology. That evening, I confronted Vanessa about the meeting. She was in our living room, drinking wine and organizing papers from Morrison Industries when I got home. I hear you had an interesting meeting today, I began, keeping my voice neutral. Vanessa didn't even look up from the documents. Oh, you heard? Janet Morrison is truly visionary. She immediately understood the potential of our platform. Our platform? Yes, ours. She finally looked at me, with that condescending expression I had learned to hate. Sam, you may be brilliant with code, but you don't understand anything about presenting ideas to executives. I turned your technical work into a viable business proposal. Vanessa, you literally told Janet Morrison that I'm just the programmer who codes your ideas. She laughed, as if I had made a naive joke. Honey, you are just the programmer. I'm the visionary behind the concept. You build what I imagine. It was at that exact moment that something broke irreparably inside me. It wasn't explosive anger or dramatic indignation. It was a cold, crystal-clear clarity, like the sound of glass shattering in slow motion. Vanessa, I said, my voice dangerously calm, you have no idea what you're talking about. Of course I do, she replied, already turning her attention back to the papers. In fact, Janet wants to schedule another meeting next week to discuss the next steps. Maybe you can come along to explain the boring technical details. Boring technical details. My entire working life, reduced to boring details, that she would graciously allow me to explain. I won't need to explain anything, I replied, climbing the stairs to my office. Because there won't be any next steps. What are you talking about? She shouted after me, but I had already closed the door. That night, I worked until 4 in the morning meticulously documenting every email, every file, every recorded conversation in which Vanessa appropriated my work. I created a detailed chronology of her lies, a compilation of evidence that proved beyond a doubt who had actually developed the platform. More importantly, I made 3 crucial phone calls. The first was to my intellectual property lawyer, Dr. Michael Chun, explaining the situation and requesting a complete audit of all my copyrights and patents. The second was to Janet Morrison, scheduling a private meeting to clarify some important intellectual property issues. The third call was the most satisfying of all. It was to David Blackwood, CEO of Pinnacle Enterprises, the largest technology company on the West Coast, who had expressed interest in acquiring my platform for a price that would make Vanessa choke on her expensive wine. David, I said when he answered, I'm ready to seriously discuss your acquisition proposal. Excellent, Sam. How long do you need to finalize the details? 1 week, I replied, looking out the office window at the garden Vanessa had redesigned with the money from my contracts. Just 1 week. While Vanessa slept downstairs, probably planning her next credit-taking performance, I was architecting her complete ruin. Because what my dear wife didn't understand was that by trying to sell my technology to Morrison Industries, she had inadvertently violated exclusivity clauses I had with other clients. Clauses that made her actions not only ethically reprehensible, but legally actionable. And when David Blackwood discovered that his future partner's wife had secretly attempted to sell the same technology to a direct competitor, well, the consequences would be devastating in ways Vanessa couldn't even imagine. War was officially declared. And this time, I wouldn't be the only one finding out who was really out of their league. The meeting with David Blackwood was scheduled for the following Friday at his office in downtown Seattle. In the meantime, I had exactly 5 days to orchestrate the most elegant destruction Vanessa could ever imagine. The morning after our confrontation about the meeting with Janet Morrison, Vanessa left the house humming. She was wearing a new blazer, also paid for by me, and carrying a leather briefcase I had never seen before. "I have a very important meeting today," she announced, adjusting the rearview mirror of the BMW. "Janet Morrison wants to discuss an exclusive contract for our platform. I may not be home until late." Our platform. Every time she said that, I felt a toxic mixture of indignation and satisfaction growing in my chest. Indignation at her blatant audacity, satisfaction because each lie buried her deeper. As soon as she left, I called Dr. Michael Chun. "Michael, I need you to prepare complete intellectual property documentation. Today." "Sam, that's very specific. Did something happen?" "My wife is trying to sell my technology as if it were her own creation. I need absolute legal protection before she causes irreversible damage." The silence on the other end of the line lasted a few seconds before Michael responded with his experienced lawyer's voice. "Sam, if she's making false representations about intellectual property to potential buyers, that's not just a civil matter. Depending on the amount involved, it could constitute corporate fraud." "The amount is 8 figures, Michael." Jesus Christ. I heard the sound of papers being shuffled quickly. "Sam, you need to document absolutely everything. Every email, every conversation, every file that proves your sole authorship of the technology." "I've already started. I also have recordings of some conversations where she falsely takes credit." "Recordings?" "Sam, you need to confirm to me that these recordings were made legally." Washington is a one-party consent state, Michael. I can record conversations I participate in without informing the other party. Perfect. I want to see everything today at 3 p.m. While waiting for my meeting with Michael, I decided to do a little investigation into Vanessa's recent activities. I accessed our joint bank account, which she managed so well, and discovered a series of expenses that made me laugh bitterly. $300 on lunches at Bella Vista over the past 2 weeks. Bella Vista was the favorite restaurant of Morrison Industries executives. Vanessa was clearly cultivating relationships at my expense, literally and figuratively. $500 on a personal image consulting service called Executive Presence. The transaction description mentioned professional narrative development and networking strategies for visionary leaders. Most revealing was a $1,200 charge from a law firm specializing in intellectual property, not the one I used. Vanessa had consulted a lawyer about the rights to my own technology. I immediately called the office. "Goldman and Associates, how can I help you?" "I'd like to speak to the attorney who met with Vanessa Richardson last week." "One moment, please." After a few seconds, "Mr. Richardson? Dr. Goldman mentioned that your wife had said you would be calling." My blood ran cold. Vanessa had anticipated that I would find out about the consultation. What exactly did she say? "That you are the technical developer of your company's platform, but that there were some issues regarding ownership documentation that needed to be clarified before the sale." If you're following this story of how a lie can turn into a complex web of betrayal, be sure to subscribe to the channel, because what happens next will show how the truth always finds a way to prevail. Vanessa wasn't just stealing credit for my creation. She was systematically building a legal case to claim co-ownership of the technology. The consultation with Goldman wasn't to protect my rights, but to find loopholes she could exploit. "Is Dr. Goldman still available for a consultation today?" I asked, keeping my voice neutral. "Sure. He has an opening at 5 p.m. "Perfect. Sam Richardson, book me in for 5 o'clock. The rest of the day was a masterclass in strategic preparation. At 3 o'clock, I met with Michael Chun and presented my entire dossier against Vanessa. Every email where she took false credit, every recording where she lied about her participation in the development, every document that proved my sole authorship. "Sam, this is devastating," Michael said, flipping through the documents. "She has no legal claim to your technology. Zero. But the fact that she's building a counter-narrative suggests she's planning a legal battle." "What kind of battle?" "A contentious divorce where she claims a share of the business assets. Based on what I see here, she's trying to create evidence that she was a co-developer of the platform." "And what's our strategy?" Michael smiled for the first time in the meeting. "Complete destruction of any claim she can make. We're going to formally register all intellectual property in your name, document your sole authorship, and prepare a case that will make any claim she makes legally frivolous." At 5 p.m., I was at the office of Goldman and Associates. Dr. Goldman was a 50-year-old man with gray hair and the expression of someone who had seen every possible variation of human greed. "Mr. Richardson, your wife came to me with some concerns about the documentation of ownership of a technology you developed together." "Together?" "Yes." She explained that although you are responsible for the coding, the conceptual vision and business strategy were her creations. She wanted to understand if that would give her rights to the intellectual property. I kept my expression carefully neutral. "And what was your advice?" "That it would depend on the existing documentation and whether she could prove substantial intellectual contribution to the development." "Dr. Goldman, I came here to clarify some facts. Vanessa never participated in the development of my platform. Not conceptually, not strategically, not technically. She is a marketing employee with no technical background." "That completely contradicts what she told me." "I have complete documentation that proves my statement, including recordings where she admits she doesn't understand how the technology works." Dr. Goldman leaned back in his chair, clearly processing the implications. "Mr. Richardson, if you are correct, your wife approached me under false pretenses. That is problematic. Even more problematic, Dr. Goldman, is that she is using this information to try to sell my technology to Morrison Industries, falsely representing herself as a co-creator." That night, I returned home with 3 absolute certainties. First, Vanessa had crossed every legal and ethical line possible. Second, my documentation was irrefutable. Third, Friday's meeting with David Blackwood would be the beginning of the end for my dear wife. Vanessa came home at 11 p.m., euphoric. "Sam, today was incredible. Janet Morrison loved our presentation. She talked about a 5-year contract, total exclusivity, maybe even an executive position for me in the company." "Good for you," I replied, not looking up from my laptop. "It's not good for me, honey. It's good for us. With this contract, we'll finally get the recognition we deserve." Recognition we deserve. As if she had contributed anything other than elaborate lies. "Vanessa, did you mention to Janet that I'm the sole developer of the platform?" "Of course I did. I said you're the best programmer I know, responsible for implementing my ideas perfectly." Implementing her ideas. It was impressive how she could rewrite reality with such conviction that she almost believed her own lies. "And when is the next meeting?" "Friday afternoon. Janet wants to present our proposal to the Morrison Industries board." "Sam, this could be life-changing." Life-changing indeed. But not in the way she imagined. While Vanessa celebrated upstairs, probably already planning how to spend money she would never see, I was finalizing the last details of what would be the most spectacular fall our city would witness in years. David Blackwood wasn't just the CEO of Pinnacle Enterprises. He was also a major investor in Morrison Industries, with a seat on the board of directors. Which meant he would be present at Friday afternoon's meeting, where Vanessa would present our proposal. The timing couldn't be more perfect. Friday would be the day Vanessa would discover that some performances have audiences that don't applaud. And that not all historical narratives end with a narrator as the hero. Friday morning arrived with a light rain that transformed Seattle into a cinematic version of itself. Vanessa left the house at 8 o'clock, wearing her most expensive blazer and carrying an Italian leather briefcase that cost more than many people earn in a month. "Today is the big day, Sam," she shouted from the garage. "When I get home, we'll be official partners at Morrison Industries." Partners. As if she had contributed anything other than elaborate lies and social theater. At 9 o'clock, I was in David Blackwood's office on the 42nd floor of Pinnacle Tower. The panoramic view of Seattle was impressive, but my attention was completely focused on the documents scattered across his mahogany desk. "Sam, this platform is genuinely revolutionary," David said, leafing through the technical specifications. "In 20 years of investing in technology, I've rarely seen anything with this potential for disruption." "Thank you, David. It's been 2 years of intensive development." "And you confirm exclusive authorship? No co-developers, partners, or collaborators who could claim rights?" "Absolutely exclusive authorship," I replied, sliding the folder Michael Chun had prepared over to him. "All intellectual property documentation is in there. Every line of code, every algorithm, every concept is my sole creation." David opened the folder and examined the documents. Intellectual property certificates, patent records, complete development chronology, and even time-stamped code backups proving my authorship from day one. Perfect. Sam, Pinnacle Enterprises is prepared to make a $15 million acquisition offer for your platform. $15 million. Enough money to buy the entire Morrison Industries if I wanted to. There's just one condition, David continued, a mysterious smile appearing on his face. I want you to attend a meeting this afternoon. At Morrison Industries. What kind of meeting? Well, as a major shareholder in Morrison Industries, I have a permanent seat on the board of directors. And today, apparently, an employee named Vanessa Richardson is going to present a very interesting technology proposal. My blood ran cold. David knew. He knew exactly who Vanessa was and what she was trying to do. Sam, when I learned that a Morrison employee was trying to sell technology identical to yours to our own company, I decided to investigate personally. And what did you find out? That your wife is an amateur fraudster trying to sell intellectual property that doesn't belong to her. Which makes me curious to see how she explains the coincidence of having developed exactly the same platform you created. The meeting at Morrison Industries was scheduled for 3 p.m. David and I arrived at 2:45 p.m. and were escorted directly to the executive conference room on the 30th floor. Charles Morrison greeted us personally, clearly nervous about the presence of his major investor at a routine meeting. David, we weren't expecting you today. Charles, when I heard you were considering a major technology acquisition, I thought it prudent to attend. Especially one that involves intellectual property claims. Janet Morrison was also present, along with 3 other executives I didn't know. Everyone seemed tense, as if they sensed something was wrong but couldn't quite put their finger on it. At 3 o'clock sharp, Vanessa entered the room like a queen at her coronation. She wore a navy blue dress that highlighted her green eyes and carried her Italian briefcase as if it were a secret weapon. Good afternoon, everyone, she said, her voice carrying that artificial confidence I knew so well. I'm excited to present our revolutionary platform. That's when she saw me sitting next to David Blackwood, and her expression changed completely. For a fraction of a second, pure panic crossed her face before she managed to recompose her social mask. Sam? What are you doing here? Vanessa, David replied before I could speak, allow me to introduce Sam Richardson, the exclusive developer of the platform you came here to present today. The silence in the room was so absolute that I could hear the air conditioning. Vanessa looked from David to me, then to Charles Morrison, trying to rapidly process a situation that was spiraling completely out of control. I don't understand. Sam is my husband. We developed this platform together. Together. David leaned back in his chair, clearly enjoying the show. Vanessa, could you explain to us exactly what your contribution to the development was? Perhaps starting with the machine learning algorithms. I was responsible for the strategic vision. And the database schemas? Did you design those too? Vanessa's face was getting progressively redder. David, I don't understand why you're questioning my expertise. Because, I interrupted, my voice deadly calm, David Blackwood is the CEO of Pinnacle Enterprises, the company that is acquiring my platform for $15 million. The Italian folder fell from Vanessa's hands, hitting the marble floor with a sound that echoed through the entire room. 15 million, she whispered. That's right, David confirmed, pulling out a contract from his own briefcase. Sam and I finalized the acquisition this morning. Pinnacle Enterprises now owns exclusive rights to this technology. Charles Morrison finally found his voice. David, if this platform has already been sold, then any attempt to acquire it through Morrison Industries would be purchasing stolen property, David finished. Charles, your employee tried to sell you something she doesn't own. Vanessa was now visibly shaking. Sam, you can't do this. I'm your wife. This platform is part of our marital assets. Marital assets. I laughed, a sound cold enough to freeze water. Vanessa, you never contributed a single line of code. You don't even understand how this technology works. But I helped with marketing. I provided strategic guidance. Really? David pulled out another folder. Vanessa, these are recordings of you admitting that you don't understand how the platform functions. We also have documentation of all your false claims of co-development. Janet Morrison was now staring at Vanessa as if it were the first time she had really seen her. Vanessa, did you lie to us about your involvement in this project? No. Sam is lying. He's trying to steal credit for my work. Your work. David stood up, his voice cutting through her desperation. Vanessa, show me a single line of code you wrote. Explain one algorithm. Describe any aspect of the back-end architecture. Vanessa opened and closed her mouth like a fish out of water. There was no response because there was no knowledge. Her entire elaborate performance was finally crumbling under the weight of the simple truth. I think, Charles Morrison said slowly, that we need to discuss the situation privately. Actually, David replied, I think everything that needed saying has been said. Sam, shall we go finalize our paperwork? As David and I got up to leave, Vanessa made one last desperate attempt. Sam, you can't do this to me. I'm your wife. I turned around slowly, meeting her eyes for the first time since this whole nightmare began. Vanessa, I said, my voice carrying all the pain and betrayal of years of manipulation, you stopped being my wife the moment you decided to steal my life's work. But what about our marriage? Our future together? Our marriage? I looked around at all the executives staring at this pathetic display. You humiliated me publicly, lied about my work, and tried to steal everything I built. What exactly did you think our future would look like? When David and I left that conference room, we left behind more than just a fraudulent business proposal. We left behind years of manipulation, lies, and emotional abuse that had finally met its inevitable end. But what Vanessa still didn't realize was that losing the Morrison Industries deal was only the beginning. Because when David Blackwood decides to destroy someone's credibility in the tech industry, he doesn't stop at just one company. And our divorce proceedings, scheduled to begin next week, would reveal exactly how devastating a $15 million acquisition could be for someone who thought she owned half of everything. 3 days after the meeting at Morrison Industries, I received a call from Janet Morrison that I never expected. Sam, I need to apologize in person, she said, her voice carrying genuine weight. Vanessa completely deceived us. We fired her immediately, and we are considering legal action for corporate fraud. What kind of action? She signed contracts claiming to be a co-developer of patented technology. That constitutes document fraud and could result in criminal charges. Our legal department is building a case that could yield up to 5 years in prison. 5 years. The same length of time our marriage based on lies lasted. There's more, Sam. We discovered that Vanessa had falsified professional references when she applied for the position here. The 2 companies she listed as previous employers have never heard of her. Vanessa's web of lies was even more extensive than I had imagined. Not only had she stolen credit for my work, her entire professional persona was an elaborate fabrication. Janet, you have the right to seek redress. But I have a different proposal. What kind of proposal? Pinnacle Enterprises is interested in establishing a technology development partnership with Morrison Industries. An agreement that would benefit both companies far more than any legal proceedings. There was silence on the other end of the line for several seconds before Janet responded with renewed interest. Sam, are you suggesting turning this awful situation into a business opportunity? Exactly. Vanessa tried to sell my technology to you illegally. How about I offer you legitimate access to future innovations through a strategic partnership? A week later, David Blackwood, Janet Morrison, and I signed a 5-year partnership agreement worth $30 million. Morrison Industries would have exclusive access to all my future technology platforms, while Pinnacle Enterprises would expand its presence in the East Coast market. Vanessa, meanwhile, was facing the full consequences of her fraudulent actions. First, immediate dismissal from Morrison Industries with cause, eliminating any right to severance or benefits. Second, criminal prosecution for document fraud, which resulted in 200 hours of community service and 3 years of probation. Third, and perhaps most devastating, the complete destruction of her professional reputation. News of her forgeries spread rapidly through the Seattle executive network, rendering her effectively unemployable in any significant corporate position. But the coup de grace came during our divorce. Michael Chun had meticulously documented every cent Vanessa spent of my earnings during our marriage. 5 years of extravagant shopping, expensive travel, and an inflated lifestyle, all financed by my company while she contributed practically nothing. Your Honor, Michael presented to the judge, Mrs. Richardson claims rights to marital assets that she not only did not help build, but actively attempted to steal through documented fraud. Judge James Whitfield examined the evidence for long minutes before delivering his verdict. It is extraordinarily rare to see a case where one party not only contributed nothing to marital assets, but actively attempted to steal them. Mrs. Richardson, based on the evidence presented, you have not only forfeited any claim to your husband's company, but you owe restitution for the funds you misappropriated. Vanessa had to pay back $120,000, money she had spent on shopping sprees, spa treatments, and elaborate social events designed to boost her fake professional image. With no savings, no job prospects, and mounting legal bills, she was forced to move back to her parents' home in Portland. The irony was perfect. The woman who had mocked my cheap suit was now living in the same bedroom she had occupied in high school, working part-time at a call center to pay her restitution debt. 6 months after our divorce was finalized, I was standing at the grand opening of my second company, Richardson Innovation Labs. David Blackwood had invested $25 million to help me build a facility that would become a research and development powerhouse. A new building in downtown Seattle featured glass walls, state-of-the-art equipment, and space for 50 developers. The lobby displayed a single elegant plaque, Innovation Through Integrity. During the opening ceremony, Janet Morrison approached me with obvious admiration. Sam, watching you transform personal betrayal into professional triumph has been inspiring. You could have destroyed Vanessa with revenge, but instead you built something meaningful. Destruction is temporary, I replied, surveying the bustling activity of my new company. Creation lasts. True satisfaction did not come from Vanessa's downfall, but from proving that authentic success cannot be stolen, only earned. As I write this today, 3 years after that humiliating dinner at the Metropolitan Hotel, my companies employ over 200 people and generate annual revenue exceeding $50 million. Vanessa? The last I heard, she was working at a small marketing firm in Portland, making slightly above minimum wage. No BMW, no designer clothes, no elegant dinner parties where she could impress executives with stolen accomplishments. If you were inspired by this story of how honesty and hard work ultimately triumph over deception and manipulation, don't forget to subscribe to the channel. Each week, we share more stories of people who faced betrayal but found the strength to rebuild and create something better than what was taken from them. The most powerful lesson from this entire experience wasn't about revenge or justice. It was about understanding that our true value doesn't come from external recognition or other people's validation. When Vanessa mocked my simple suit that night, she revealed not just her own shallow priorities, but also her fundamental misunderstanding of what real success means. Real success isn't about impressing people in fancy restaurants or wearing expensive clothes purchased with someone else's money. Real success is building something valuable, contributing meaningfully to your community, and maintaining your integrity even when others try to tear you down. Today, when I attend business dinners, I still wear moderately priced suits. Not because I cannot afford better, but because I learned that a person's worth has nothing to do with their clothing budget. The woman who once humiliated me for my supposedly inadequate appearance now works for barely above minimum wage, while a man in his cheap suit built an empire through authentic innovation and uncompromising ethics. Sometimes a simple suit carries more integrity than all the designer labels in the world. And sometimes, when someone tries to diminish your worth based on superficial standards, they're revealing much more about their own limitations than yours. The last time I saw Vanessa was purely by accident, at a grocery store in Portland during a business trip. She was working as a cashier, scanning items with a mechanical efficiency that suggested this was routine rather than temporary. When our eyes met across a checkout lane, neither of us spoke. There was nothing left to say. She had revealed her true character through her actions, and I had proven mine through mine. I nodded politely, completed my purchase at a different lane, and left without looking back. Because sometimes, true victory isn't about confrontation or final words. Sometimes it's simply about living well, building meaningfully, and letting your authentic success speak louder than any words ever could. This is the story of how one night of humiliation became a catalyst for building something far greater than I had ever imagined possible. And if there is one lesson I hope you take away from this, it is that no one can diminish your true worth unless you give them permission to do so. Never let anyone make you feel inadequate based on superficial measures. Your value comes from your character, your integrity, and your contributions to the world around you. And when someone tries to steal credit for your work or mock you for not meeting their shallow standards, remember, authentic success cannot be faked, stolen, or bought. It can only be earned through genuine effort, honest work, and unwavering commitment to your principles. In the end, an expensive blazer couldn't save Vanessa from a complete professional downfall, while a simple suit carried me to heights she never imagined I could reach.